Sometimes there's no visible reason. One day, someone smiles at you with warmth, and the next, they don't look at you the same way. You can't pinpoint when the tone changed, why the person who used to seek your company now seems to avoid you, or even take pleasure in your stumbles. It's a silent war fought through glances, through silence, through small absences. It hurts because it comes without warning and makes us doubt ourselves. Did I do something wrong? But behind that sudden change, there's usually something deeper, something that has nothing to do with you. The hatred others develop isn't always a reaction to your flaws, but to your growth, your peace, that inner light that unsettles those who haven't yet found their own. Many have experienced it. Relationships that grow cold for no reason, friendships that turn distant, family members who start speaking with sarcasm or ignore your messages. Sometimes simply changing, healing, or setting boundaries awakens resistance in those around you. And that's where the conflict begins. While you seek peace, others feel threatened. But understanding this phenomenon with calm, as the Stoics taught, changes everything. Marcus Aurelius said that no one can harm you unless you allow it in your mind. This video is a journey into that understanding, into the invisible reasons behind rejection, the signs that reveal it, and the inner practice that helps you stay calm even when your surroundings turn hostile. If this is your first time here, my name is Gabriel. I work with people who have learned, often through pain, that protecting their peace is not selfishness, but dignity. In this space, we share practical wisdom to live with serenity even when others don't change. I invite you to stay, subscribe, and join me until the end, because there I'll share a mental ritual inspired by Stoic philosophy that will help you shield yourself from hatred without losing tenderness or self-love. Let's begin. Few experiences are as unsettling as watching someone who once cared for you begin to show disdain. Sometimes the change is subtle, almost imperceptible. A gesture that used to be warm turns cold, a gaze looks away, a kind word is replaced by a loaded silence. It's one of those invisible wounds that's hard to explain because there isn't always a specific conflict, just a different atmosphere. What once flowed easily now feels heavy, and you wonder what happened. But the cause is rarely within you. It usually lies in the discomfort your own growth stirs in others. When a person matures emotionally, they stop playing certain roles that once kept the old dynamic in place, and that can be seen by others as a threat, a betrayal, or a loss of control. The Stoic Seneca put it clearly: "He who is angered by another's good fortune suffers most from his own evil." That phrase captures the essence of the problem. When you grow, you become a mirror for other people's shortcomings. Your calm can spark frustration in those still living in chaos. Your firmness can provoke resentment in those who never dared to set boundaries. Your joy can awaken envy in those who remain stuck. In psychology, this is called cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that arises from seeing in someone else what you have not yet been able to achieve. Faced with that inner conflict, many people project outward the unease they don't know how to manage, and affection turns into contempt without any real cause behind it. It also happens that relationships often depend on invisible balances. When you were compliant or always available, the bond made sense to the other person. But if you start saying no, if you stop giving in so easily, the other feels something slipping away. That's where the narcissistic wound appears, the sense that you've stopped revolving around them. Affection becomes criticism because the ego can't tolerate losing its position of power. It's hard to accept, but hatred is often a twisted way of saying, "I can't control you anymore." It's not an attack on your essence, but on your independence. So far, we've seen that sudden changes in affection don't always come from a real offense, but from an inability to process your growth. Understanding that is freeing. It's not about excusing cold behavior, but about refusing to carry guilt that isn't yours. The one who chooses to hate is really turning away from themselves, not from you. So when you sense that emotional distance, don't rush to explain yourself, to defend yourself, or to beg for things to go back to how they were. Sometimes the wisest act is to remain silent, not as punishment, but as a sign of maturity. A mind seeking peace must learn to observe without absorbing. This is what the Stoics called apatheia, not in the modern sense of indifference, but as the soul's freedom from the passions of others. When you understand that you can't control anyone else's emotions, you stop taking their reactions as measures of your worth. And that understanding is power. Because true control isn't about mastering others, it's about staying calm, even when the world reacts noisily to your stillness. Perhaps someone close to you began to pull away just when you decided to take better care of yourself, or when you started to speak truths gently. Maybe they can't bear it because you embody what they've denied themselves. Don't take it as an offense. See it as proof that your process is working. Sometimes, when one person heals, the unhealthy environment resists. And that's not a failure, it's confirmation. The relationships that can't withstand your growth aren't meant to follow you into your next chapter. Self-love isn't proven by demanding to be understood, but by respecting yourself even when you're not. If you can stay centered and firm without returning disdain, you'll be practicing one of the highest Stoic virtues, equanimity. That's the foundation for everything that follows, because to recognize the signs of hidden hatred, you must first understand that not all rejection comes from malice, but from the confusion that light creates in those still living in shadow. Few forms of rejection hurt as much as silence. There's no argument, no visible offense, just the other person suddenly stopping all response. They ignore you for no apparent reason, as if your existence had lost its value overnight. And that emptiness weighs more than any word could. Silence doesn't just confuse, it punishes. In psychology, it's called punishment by omission, a way to exert power without direct confrontation. The one who ignores you knows it, creates anxiety, that your mind will start searching for reasons, that you'll try to fix something you may not have broken. It's a dangerous emotional game because it feeds on imbalance. One begs for a sign, while the other enjoys withholding it. From a Stoic perspective, someone else's silence should not define your peace. Epictetus said that it's not things themselves that disturb us, but the interpretations we give them. When someone chooses to ignore you, you still have the power not to turn that act into a personal wound. You can't control another person's silence, but you can decide not to turn it into internal noise. Often, indifference is simply a way to test your emotional dependence. The one ignoring you wants to see if they still hold power over you, if your attention still revolves around them. And that's where you can break the pattern. Instead of insisting, observe. Instead of begging for a response, stay calm. We've already understood that negative reactions often reflect other people's inner turmoil. When silence appears, it's rarely a sign of your mistake. It's more often a sign of their discomfort. Maybe you said something that set a boundary, or you simply stopped being so accommodating. That sudden distance is their way of reclaiming lost control. If you react with distress or anger, you reinforce the cycle. If you respond with calm, you dismantle it. The key isn't to match their disdain, but to act from your center without overreacting. Silence can also be a space for self-reflection. Why does not getting a response affect you so deeply? What part of you fears being forgotten or rejected? Sometimes the pain caused by indifference doesn't speak about the other person at all. It reveals old, unresolved wounds, the need for approval, the fear of loneliness, the belief that your worth depends on being loved. Facing that emptiness consciously can become an opportunity for emotional maturity. It's not about hardening yourself, it's about learning to stand firm when the other person disappears. It's important to recognize that in healthy relationships, communication flows. Prolonged silence, on the other hand, is an act of power. When someone who once cared for you suddenly stops talking without explanation, they're communicating something. I want you to feel my absence. But you can respond with a higher form of communication: consistency. Don't chase, don't demand, don't dramatize. Show that your well-being doesn't depend on someone else's attention. That ends the game. As Seneca said, those who master their reactions master their destiny. In time, you'll see that the silence wasn't a wall, but a doorway to your own emotional independence. You'll learn to distinguish between someone who ignores you to manipulate and someone who simply needs space. The difference lies in intention, and that only becomes clear when you observe without anxiety. Don't answer emptiness with desperation. Answer it with presence. When you can do that, you'll have taken a crucial step in Stoic practice, inner freedom in the face of others' behavior. Because silence, when rightly understood, takes nothing from you. It returns you to yourself, and from that place of stillness, you'll be able to recognize the next sign more clearly, the one disguised as humor or a casual remark, but that wounds just the same, the subtle criticism meant to diminish you in the eyes of others. Sometimes poison isn't thrown with shouts, but with a smile. It comes in those small phrases, wrapped in humor or apparent affection, that actually conceal contempt. Oh, you're always so sensitive. Sure, since you do everything perfectly, we all know you think you're always right. Behind those words lies a clear message. I want to put you down without giving you a way to defend yourself, without looking overdramatic. It's a form of disguised aggression, a blow delivered with silk gloves. The person doing it wants to undermine your confidence in front of others and test whether they can still hurt you. Subtle criticism is resentment's favorite disguise because it allows someone to attack without taking responsibility. From a psychological standpoint, this behavior is called passive contempt, and it usually stems from the conflict between admiration and envy. That person values you, but also feels threatened by what you represent. They can't stand to see you calm or successful in areas where they feel limited. So they try to bring you down through teasing or sarcasm. Deep down, they don't truly want to hurt you. They want to ease their own sense of inferiority. But the result is the same. The relationship deteriorates, and you end up feeling guilty for something you didn't even do. So far, we've seen that silence was a form of hidden punishment. This second sign, however, seeks to expose you. And here is where Epictetus's teaching applies. If someone speaks ill of you, defend yourself with your conduct, not with your words. That's the essence of Stoicism in human relationships. You can't prevent others from criticizing you, but you can choose not to play along. When we respond with sarcasm, we return the offense and keep the cycle alive. When we respond with calm and consistency, we disarm the aggressor without needing to humiliate them. Emotionally, what unsettles the provocateur most is failing to get a reaction. Hatred feeds on attention, and when you withdraw that fuel, it burns out on its own. If someone ridicules you in front of others, smile calmly and change the subject, or simply say with composure, "I don't see the point of that comment." There's no need to fight. Just reveal the intention without aggression. That simple act sets a clear boundary and restores your control. Over time, the other person will realize they can no longer use irony to dominate you. It's also worth reflecting on why those criticisms hurt so much. Sometimes they wound us because they touch a place where we already doubt ourselves. If someone says something unfair about you and it hurts deeply, ask yourself, What part of me still seeks external validation? Stoicism teaches that true worth doesn't depend on applause or approval, but on a clear conscience. The next time someone subtly criticizes you, remember, their comment speaks about them, not about you. Every offensive word can become training for your character. It's not about turning to stone, but about developing the calm strength that lets you see clearly what you can and cannot control. And that's a daily, almost handcrafted practice that prepares you for what's ahead. Because as you regain your balance, people notice, and not everyone will like it. Learning to stay centered amid criticism is one of the purest forms of inner freedom. And before we move on to the next sign, let me invite you to something. If this message resonates with you, consider subscribing, giving it a like, and leaving your name and country in the comments. I love reading where in the world you're listening from and which signs you recognize in your own life. You can also share another one you've noticed, so we can keep expanding this list of subtle ways rejection disguises itself as affection. Your presence here helps this space continue to grow in serenity and shared understanding. Now let's move on, because there's an even quieter form of aggression, one that doesn't seek to hurt you in front of others, but to erase you from their life without a word. Exclusion. There's a kind of rejection that isn't announced, it just happens. Suddenly you notice they no longer call. Plans are made without you, and the gatherings where you once felt welcome now happen in silence. No one says anything, but you feel it. You've been left out. And the most painful part isn't the absence itself, but the indifference with which it happens. That exclusion becomes an invisible message saying, "We don't need you." It's one of the subtlest forms of social aggression because it leaves no evidence, yet it leaves deep wounds. The person excluding you often isn't directly seeking to harm you. They're trying to reassert their power, mark territory, or retaliate against the independence that unsettles them. From a psychological point of view, this behavior stems from a need for control. Someone who feels they've lost influence over you may try to reduce your presence. It's not always conscious, but the underlying intention is clear: to make you feel that without their approval, you don't belong. And if you react by pleading, you confirm their power. That's why the first step is not to beg for inclusion. If they exclude you, observe calmly. Ask yourself whether that space truly nourishes your life or if you were simply holding on out of emotional habit. Sometimes it's not punishment at all, but a disguised form of liberation. So far, we've seen how silence and veiled criticism are expressions of the same inner conflict. Exclusion is the next stage. When they can no longer manipulate you with words, they try to do it through absence. But as Seneca taught, no wind is favorable to the one who doesn't know to which port he sails. If you know who you are and where you're going, you don't need anyone else's wind to move forward. From a Stoic perspective, exclusion becomes an opportunity to strengthen emotional independence. It's no longer about resisting rejection, it's about transcending it. Think of a garden. When one flower grows too tall, some leaves around it fold back to find their own light. They don't do it out of malice, but necessity. The same happens with people. When you grow, those who haven't begun their own process may feel like you're taking up too much space. But the sun doesn't stop shining out of fear of making others uncomfortable, and neither should you dim your light for fear of being left out. Exclusion isn't always a loss. Sometimes it's confirmation that your path has changed direction. It's natural for it to hurt. We're social beings, and we need belonging. But true belonging begins when you can be with yourself without fearing the emptiness. Every time someone leaves you out, you can choose to see it as rejection or as training in dignified solitude. The first choice chains you, the second frees you. The The key is to avoid falling into the victim role. The question isn't, why did they leave me out? But what can I learn from this collective silence? Over time, you'll realize you don't need to be everywhere or belong to every group. There are spaces where you no longer fit because your energy has changed. And that's okay. Learning to accept that without resentment is a sign of emotional maturity. Exclusion forces you to define who you are without constantly being reflected in others. It's uncomfortable, but it's pure growth. When the world closes a door on you, see it as an invitation to build your own. The people who truly value you won't disappear when you set boundaries. They'll stay because they recognize your essence beyond convenience. And those are the relationships that matter. In the next point, we'll explore another sign, one that's even more deceptive, when your words are twisted to manipulate the story, turning the conversation into an emotional trap. There's something deeply exhausting about constantly having to clarify your words. You speak calmly, yet the other person takes it as an attack. You try to set a boundary, and they accuse you of being selfish. You express your feelings, and they turn it into a personal offense. This is one of the most draining signs of hidden rejection, the manipulation of your words. The one who distorts what you say isn't trying to understand you, they're trying to control the narrative. They twist your words to play the victim and make you feel guilty. Deep down, it's a way of maintaining psychological control, creating confusion until you start doubting what you actually said. In psychology, this phenomenon is known as gaslighting or cognitive manipulation, and it has a clear purpose: to erode your inner confidence. When someone insists that you said something you didn't say, or that you said it differently, their goal isn't to understand, it's to weaken you. The result is a gradual loss of trust in your own voice. But this is where Stoic wisdom becomes a guiding light. Epictetus taught that it's not things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them. If someone twists your words, you can choose not to feed their version. You're not obliged to justify yourself every time. Sometimes, serene silence is the most powerful response. Up to this point, we've seen that exclusion and silence aim to isolate you externally. This sign, however, seeks to disarm you from within. It's more dangerous because it attacks mental clarity. And when you lose that clarity, the other gains emotional ground. That's why keeping your mind lucid is vital. Before responding, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself whether what they're claiming actually happened, or if it's manipulation disguised as dialogue. Don't fall into the trap of debating versions. The truth doesn't need constant defense, only consistency. Some people can't stand your serenity, and when they can't shake your actions, they try to twist your words. But truth always finds a way to hold up over time. Those who lie about you will eventually contradict themselves. Those who try to confuse you will end up tangled in their own story. Your task isn't to expose them, it's to stay untangled. Seneca said that a mind disturbed by what others think becomes its own slave. Freedom, then, lies in not living defensively. You might feel tempted to record conversations, save messages, or prove with evidence that you're right. But that only drains you. It pulls you out of your center. You don't need to convince someone who refuses to understand. What you can do is speak clearly and calmly. Use simple sentences, no embellishment, and then let it go. Don't repeat the same explanation more than once. Those who want to understand will. Those who don't will find another way to blame you. Inner peace comes when you stop negotiating with distortion. And there's more. Every time someone twists your words, they're giving you a chance to strengthen your identity. You learn to trust your emotional memory more than external versions. When you know who you are and what you said, you no longer rely on someone else's narrative to hold your coherence. At that point, the power shifts. You don't need to defend yourself from everyone. Just don't betray yourself. If you can stay calm in the face of manipulation, you'll have taken a huge step toward emotional independence. And it's precisely that independence that often triggers another reaction in those who can't stand to see you grounded. The urge to compete with you. That's the next sign we'll explore. A louder version of the same inner conflict that arises when your calmness becomes a mirror for their insecurity. Some people simply can't stand to see you at peace. If you achieve something good, they point out what you're still missing. If you share a joy, they counter with something better. If you talk about your progress, they downplay it or change the subject. That need to compete in everything, even in pain, is one of the clearest signs of hidden resentment. Behind that attitude lies a deep wound, the inability to feel happy for someone else's good fortune. Those who don't love themselves live in constant comparison, and when they compare, they inevitably suffer. That's why they turn every interaction into an invisible race. What they don't understand is that you're no longer competing with anyone because you're on a different kind of journey, the journey toward inner peace. From a psychological perspective, constant comparison is linked to low self-esteem and what's known as the mirror syndrome. Such a person can only define themselves through contrast. They need to outdo you to feel worthy. When they see you progressing effortlessly or staying calm in difficult situations, their sense of identity starts to shake. They compete with you to reassure themselves that they still matter. But Stoicism teaches that virtue is its own reward. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, "The worth of a man is measured by the worth of what he values." If you value serenity and the other person values superiority, you're each measuring life on completely different scales. Up to now, we've seen how twisting your words was meant to confuse your mind. Competition, on the other hand, aims to unsettle your heart. The person competing with you wants to pull you into the arena of ego because that's where they hold the advantage. But you can choose to remain in your center, in that calm space where nothing is measured or compared. When someone tries to overshadow your success or belittle your achievement, smile with genuine joy. Congratulate them, not out of pretense, but because by doing so, you remind them that comparison has no hold over you. That attitude quietly disarms any unspoken rivalry. Competition isn't always open conflict. Sometimes it's disguised as help. They give you unsolicited advice, correct you with a patronizing tone, or try to prove they know more. It's their way of marking hierarchy. But in mature relationships, there are no hierarchies, there's respect. And respect also means allowing the other person their own process without trying to outdo it. The problem is that many can't handle quiet success. They mistake your serenity for arrogance and your silence for disdain. So they push harder to prove they can do better. Don't take it as an offense, take it as proof that you're moving forward more than you realize. The secret is not to lower yourself. Don't step into the comparison, not even to defend yourself. If they say they could do it better, let them. If they minimize your accomplishments, remember that your worth isn't measured by someone else's words. Competition loses all meaning when one side stops running. It's like dropping your weapon in the middle of a duel. The other won't know how to go on. In that silent gesture lies great strength. The strength of someone who no longer needs to prove anything. You can also use this situation to observe your own shadow. Is there still a part of you that craves recognition? Does it hurt to be compared because you still long for validation? Someone else's competitiveness can serve as a mirror showing you what's left to heal. Stoicism isn't about being invulnerable, it's about being conscious. Each time someone challenges you from their ego, you have the chance to practice both humility and firmness. Remember this: self-love doesn't need witnesses, and true peace competes with no one. If you can remain in that stillness, even provocation becomes a lesson. And yet, There's still one more step in this emotional escalation. When the other person can no longer outdo or confuse you, they turn to the ego's oldest strategy, blaming you for their unhappiness. That's the next ground we'll explore, where many relationships reach a breaking point with no return. There comes a point when every conversation follows the same script. No matter what you do, somehow it's always your fault. If you distance yourself, you're cold. If you get closer, you're intrusive. If you set boundaries, you're selfish. If you give in, they say you lack character. This kind of person always finds a way to make you responsible for their emotional state. And it's not because they're seeking understanding, it's because they need a villain to sustain their own story. It's a psychological trap many fall into, believing that if the other person is unhappy, it's your duty to fix it. But that's where emotional exhaustion begins. You can't heal what the other refuses to face within themselves. In psychology, this is known as emotional displacement. Those who don't want to face their pain project it onto those closest to them. They assign you the task of fixing what they're afraid to confront. And if you don't play along, they accuse you of being insensitive. It's an endless loop. The more you try to help, the more they blame you for not doing it right. Stoicism offers a different way out, learning to distinguish between what depends on you and what doesn't. Epictetus put it simply, some things are within our power and others are not. The well-being of another person belongs to their own inner sphere, not yours. When you understand this, you stop carrying guilt that was never yours to bear. Up to now, we've seen that competition sought to shake your confidence. Guilt, on the other hand, tries to trap you emotionally. It's an invisible bond that ties you through misplaced compassion. But not everything that looks like empathy is healthy. There's a difference between accompanying and absorbing. To accompany is to be present in serenity. To absorb is to lose yourself trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. If someone blames you for their sadness, anger, or failure, take a breath and remember, everyone lives inside their own mind. You're not responsible for someone else's storms. That doesn't mean becoming indifferent. It means loving with boundaries. Love without limits turns into sacrifice, and constant sacrifice becomes resentment. You can calmly say, I'm sorry you're going through that, but I'm not the cause of your unhappiness. That simple phrase draws an emotional line that many fear to set. You don't need to argue or justify yourself. It's enough to state the truth without anger. Emotional maturity isn't about always being right. It's about not losing your peace while trying to prove it. Sometimes guilt is reinforced by the past. They remind you of old mistakes, words said long ago, decisions that no longer define who you are. They do it to keep you anchored to remorse, because a guilty person is easier to control. But guilt resolves nothing. It only sustains dependence. Calm responsibility, however, the kind that acknowledges what you've done without taking on what you haven't, sets you free. Seneca said that no one can condemn you if you've already forgiven yourself. And that's the key. Once you stop punishing yourself, external accusations lose their power. Ask yourself for a moment, how many times have you taken on someone else's guilt just to keep the peace? And how many of those times left you feeling empty? Realizing that you're not the guardian of anyone's happiness is an act of compassion toward yourself. You weren't born to fix others, but to grow alongside them. And if someone can't accept that, they don't deserve the power to define your worth. Hatred disguised as guilt is one of the hardest forms of manipulation to detect because it hides behind the mask of affection. I'm only saying this because I care. But beneath that mask lies the need to keep you tied. When you learn to see that manipulation clearly and respond calmly, you'll have taken another step toward inner freedom. And yet, there's still one last sign. perhaps the most insidious of all, because it hides behind a show of affection in public while quietly undermining you in private. Emotional hypocrisy, the double face that claims to love you openly but denies you behind closed doors. There's a kind of deceit that isn't obvious at first. These are people who, in your presence, flatter you, listen to you, even seem to admire you. But when you're gone, they use those same words as weapons. They claim to appreciate you, yet if they can gain approval from others at your expense, they won't hesitate. Speaking well of you when you're around and badly when you're not is a subtle form of emotional sabotage. It doesn't just destroy trust, it seeks to damage your reputation in ways you can't defend against. The cruelest part is how well it hides behind courtesy. The enemy shows up with a friendly smile. And it hurts more because it often comes from someone you once called a friend, partner, or family member. From a psychological point of view, this behavior comes from a mix of repressed envy and a deep need for social validation. The person acting this way can't stand the gap between the image you project and the insecurity they feel inside. They praise you to keep the connection, but betray you to avoid feeling inferior around others. They need to be liked, even if it means betraying you. Deep down, they don't speak ill of you because they hate you, but because they can't love themselves. Understanding that doesn't excuse the behavior, but it helps you avoid taking it personally. Up to now, we've seen how guilt is used as emotional manipulation. The double face, however, mixes manipulation with cowardice. It's a silent war in which the other person doesn't dare confront you directly. Instead, they plant seeds of doubt behind your back, hoping others will do the rejecting for them. In such cases, Stoicism offers a firm response. Don't lower yourself to their level. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Your consistency is the most powerful denial of any rumor. Sometimes the temptation is to confront, to demand explanations, to expose the truth. But that often only fuels the conflict. Instead, watch calmly who drifts away and who stays. The truth filters itself out. Over time, masks fall, and people reveal who they really are. Those who betray with words expose themselves through their actions. Serenity lets you see these shifts clearly without needing to react. Don't waste energy defending your name to everyone. Protect your peace. Your reputation will restore itself in time, but your tranquility can vanish in a moment if you try to fight every lie. There's something liberating in accepting that not everyone will speak well of you, even when your intentions are good. Trying to control what others think is a draining mistake. The only thing you can control is your integrity. If you remain consistent in what you think, say, and do, truth will stand on its own. Those who truly know you will see past the twisted words. The noise fades when you stop feeding it. And perhaps without realizing it, those who speak ill of you are actually doing you a favor. They're cleansing your environment. Every false rumor reveals who doesn't deserve to be near you. So instead of mourning betrayals, thank them silently. They're showing you which bonds were fragile and which ones are real. As Seneca said, "There is no better test of character than adversity." False tongues, though painful, sharpen your discernment. When you learn not to react, when you can walk away without hatred and keep your dignity intact, you'll have reached a profound level of freedom. But there's still one final step. Recognizing the signs of hatred isn't enough. You must learn to shield your inner self so none of it disturbs your peace. In the final chapter, we'll share a simple yet powerful mental ritual inspired by Stoic philosophy to help you maintain calm and self-respect even in the face of contempt. Because only those who truly know themselves can remain standing when the world decides to reject them. After recognizing each of these signs, we reach the most important point: how to protect your mind and heart without closing them off. This isn't about building a wall of coldness, it's about learning to live calmly amid the noise. The Stoics didn't seek to eliminate emotions but to govern them. Epictetus said, "No one can harm you without your consent," and that is the essence of inner shielding, learning not to grant that consent. Hatred, criticism, and exclusion lose their power when your mind stops revolving around them. That's why the ritual I propose isn't an external technique, but a mental habit, a silent practice you can do at any moment. Begin each day with a moment of awareness. Before checking your messages or speaking to anyone, sit quietly and repeat in your mind, "Nothing that others do will steal my serenity today." It's not a magic phrase, it's a decision. In that brief act, you reclaim ownership of your mind. Picture your inner world as a bright space. Every hostile thought that enters dissolves before it can touch you. Imagine that the peace you've built over time is a flame no one can extinguish. This simple exercise, practiced consistently, gives you back control. You can also do a nightly review, just as Seneca recommended. Before going to sleep, reflect on the day with honesty and ask yourself, did I act from my center or from my ego? Did I allow someone else's anger to become my own? If you did, don't punish yourself. Simply notice it and let it go. Self-compassion is an essential part of this ritual. Shielding yourself doesn't mean hardening. It means understanding that your emotions are yours alone and shouldn't be governed by others' actions. When your mind stops reacting automatically, the hatred of others can no longer enter. Up to now, we've explored the pain of rejection and the subtlety of invisible wounds. This final step closes the circle, transforming the wound into wisdom. Inner shielding isn't achieved through strength, but through conscious gentleness. It means keeping your self-love intact, even when others deny you recognition. It means telling yourself every day, "I don't need to be understood to be at peace." That thought, repeated with serenity, becomes an invisible, weightless armor that goes with you wherever you are. Practice gratitude, too. When someone criticizes you, silently thank them for giving you the chance to practice calm. When someone excludes you, thank them for the space to grow. When someone twists your words, thank them for the clarity of knowing who you are. This isn't resignation, it's power. The power to turn every offense into training for the soul. That's how hatred stops affecting you, not because it disappears, but because it has nowhere to take root. If you can achieve this, you'll discover a rare kind of freedom, the freedom to be kind without being vulnerable to contempt, to remain tender even in the face of conflict. That is the true triumph of the modern Stoic, to keep loving without letting the hatred of others contaminate the inner self. And when life tests you, remember this ritual. You don't need to shout it, defend it, or explain it, only to practice it. Because the one who stays in peace becomes their own refuge. And with that refuge within your soul, your journey is complete. You now understand not only why people may come to hate you without reason, but also how to keep your balance when it happens. From here on, everything else is silence, a silence that no longer punishes, but protects. Throughout this journey, we've seen that other people's hatred rarely comes from what you do, but from what you represent. We've learned that behind silence, criticism, or exclusion, there's almost always fear, insecurity, or envy. That competition and blame are simply reflections of those who haven't yet made peace with themselves. And that the real challenge isn't to avoid these signs, but to remain calm when they appear. What we've discovered together is that you don't need to defend yourself against every hostile gesture, just avoid reacting from the same place. Stoicism teaches us that peace isn't conquered outwardly, but inwardly, and that every attack can become an opportunity to strengthen your composure. Thank you for making it this far. Your presence until the end is proof of inner strength and a genuine desire to live with greater dignity. This space exists because people like you believe in the power of reflection and growth through maturity. Nothing we share would have meaning without the constant presence of those who listen, think, and apply what they've learned. Every minute you dedicate to caring for your mind and your heart contributes to a more peaceful life and inspires others to do the same. My name is Gabriel, and this work was born from the purpose of walking alongside you on this path, learning to protect your peace and your dignity even when others don't change. That's the heart of everything we do here. Because true growth isn't about becoming invulnerable, it's about staying human and aware even when the world turns hostile. If something you heard today struck a chord within you, if you recognized a sign or understood a pattern, it means you're already closer to the emotional freedom you deserve. And before we part, I'd like to ask you one thing. Tell me in the comments which country you're listening from and write this phrase to seal what we've learned today. My peace depends on no one. That will be your symbolic way of claiming control over your mind and your energy. If you believe this message could help someone going through a similar situation, share it with them. Perhaps what you heard today will be the light they need. Thank you for your time, for your presence, and for continuing to walk this path of practical wisdom. You are not alone. Serenity can be trained, and every day of awareness is a silent victory. Up next, you'll see 2 videos on the screen. Choose one and continue deepening your journey of growth and inner strength.